apparently one of the reasons why men like Pompina, or whatever his name is, are comfortable with a society that has misplaced priorities, is dangerous, and inflammatory rhetoric and of good intentions on the part of the people who are being lambasted left and right with irrational ideas about them, has $2 million a day or something to spend on security details. So he's perfectly comfortable with the situation. Well, I don't. You know, the reason why I was targeted and continue to be held in domestic terror arrangements is because the NAM Quorum, the veterans who were pro Nixon, wanted to cut me out from the pack and make me look really, really, really badly because apparently there was some role in my father's distinguished service as a naval veteran, talking about the Vietnam War as an immoral war. And of course, they were planting evidence of a plan to kill the Kennedys, and they went on to kill Cersei Kennedy and so forth. So they wanted to make me look as badly as possible. And they're in a position to capitalize on any attempt to look at both sides in the Ukraine as a defense of Putin's irrational behavior. Well, they had me cut out at Temple University as the Jane Fonda of the campus. And I'll show you the sort of things I have to deal with. I have this painting I did of a black woman raising her child called Ma, and I just get this news that an Asian woman named Ma was killed with a rock. This is the sort of thing that's been going on for a long time. I said yesterday, Joe Manchin can go shoot clay ducks, which is his talent for promoting himself as a macho man of the people among these veterans. And of course, word went out to everyone who might be interpreted as a duck that Jimmy had put their lives in danger. Now, why, if so many people were aware of this, hasn't there been an attempt to rationally investigate Twisted Louis, for example, and Greg Coral, who are clearly behind a lot of that? Well, the reason is because of the Iron Curtain of Joe Biden. There is a tendency. I saw the former president of the Ukraine this morning, and boy, was he living it up. I'm not saying that anybody's pleased with what happened. Certainly he's not. And he's going to get me. But he was saying that he spoke for the NATO and so forth. What good is the news jumped up and down, the jumping hole. All the white people in Canada turned out as one. It was inspiring, believe me. As a person, I like seeing people go to the jumping hole in defense of what the people in the Ukraine. But they're going to get me wrong no matter what I say. They're going to say, oh, this was all in defense of Putin. Doesn't matter that I'm defending the legacy and heritage of myself as a library clerk, the philosophy of education, the academics. I saw a man on TV saying the whole thing was because of the snakes of fascism. Looking at them, you wouldn't know it wasn't. So he says he's speaking for NATO and stuff. We're going to get dragged into a nuclear war in defense of the Ukraine. And Fox or whoever they are, I don't pay much. I'm not specifically minded when it comes to detecting a slogan like, "Oh, Putin's following Hitler about the Sudeten Germans." He may be, but there's a difference between what happened in Donbass and Sudeten Germans. The Sudeten Germans were not under siege or warfare from Czechoslovakia the way the Russians in Donbass were. They weren't given Fort Minsk treaties or something that were not being signed but not being honored. That's where the Iron Curtain of Joe Biden comes in. We're talking about Russia being isolated, being cut out of the pack. But that Iron Curtain was already in potentially in play, and it was blocking out information about the refusal of NATO to think properly about what Russian liberalization might mean if we approached it carefully. Instead, we were pushing this gunboat diplomacy. Here's our golden opportunity to push in. The former president of the Ukraine does not speak for NATO. He made it sound like he was. He barely speaks for the European Union even now. So you have to be really careful with the idea that there's a golden Reich who knows all and sees all. They're going to conjure Reagan and Nixon. Oh, they knew what the Russians were stuff. What those people did was absurd. It was just brutal and crazy. And Putin makes his case, of course, by citing that kind of stuff. I'm not into it. Hypocrisy is hypocrisy. But the spin command of UW Dialectical look at every detail. I do not have enough money to protect myself. Even if I wanted a weapon, I couldn't afford one. I don't want one, so I'm not complaining. But the laws protect me, and that's hopefully good enough. But these people terrorize my family. Mark David Chapman sees his wife more than I'm allowed to talk to any of my ex-girlfriends. Every single person in my family has been threatened. Every single person I like is threatened because I like them by this monstrosity that Joe Biden has an Iron Curtain, refuses because he's into Twisted Louis. He sees Twisted Louis as a higher order of American than me. So, then they know how to make me cry. The very fact that Greta Thunberg was put up out of the rabbit's hat, right, made me crying, because she was left in the place, this person I absolutely love. And so I knew what role she was going to play in the whole thing. That could inflict terror on me. And so I was weeping not only out of relief for this phenomenally intelligent, beautiful human being, but suffering for the terror that I'm going to have to live with. And of course, no, Joe Biden has an Iron Curtain on that. He doesn't care about Twisted Louis. He's not. And people who've seen my videos know how aggravated the whole situation really is. It's appalling. But Navalny gets to see his wife. I don't even get to talk to any women. If I so much as look at a hanky pank picture, they wire it through their intelligence system to say I'm being unfaithful to Schwarzenegger's dollhouse. And that's the way and then the way they go about doing this stuff is who's going to stop me, right? Who queerbaits Jane Fonda of Temple University. He's not going to stop. So, and they spend $2 million a day on these rockets. Now, who do I think is actually behind it? Police Union and Postal Union from Carnegie Mellon, for one thing. The robotics sector who set up two versions of Pussy Ball, that was the robotics sector. Ian Wadmaker used to say, step on a crack, you break your mother's back. And these were the people who solicited and demanded and tortured me for sex as a child, who then made me deaf, saying you were a sinner, so we'll take away your ears. Step on a crack, break your mother's back. Say the wrong thing, and Twisted Louis is going to, what's going to happen? His ankle's going to go. So, yeah, it's so they're making bad calls and letting this stuff go. They're making real bad calls. And we lost all these Kennedys, 1, 2, 3. Who's going to stop? You know, and the subtext of the dialectic that goes on with these people is very persuasive on its own terms. I agree with it. They misuse it, but you can get tricked into agreeing with them when they're really misusing something. For example, we had a rule in what happened in Syria. There's no people have no business calling Sharia or enemy because it's just a bunch of hooey. There are elements of Sharia that are completely compatible with the United States law, and there's civil issues like orphan status. And then we have criminal law. It's not even a consideration. It's not that it's an enemy, it's just that customs differ. So we didn't welcome the refugees. I mean, we tried to welcome the Afghanistan Muslims because we pulled out. Some argued ignobly. Do we try to help the people in Haiti with the same zeal, with the same teary-eyedness that the white Christians of Canada, came about for the Ukraine? Do we try to help Vanessa Nakata, who's the world's leading intellectual at this point? I mean, if you read her, I mean, Noam Chomsky's still interesting, but if you read Vanessa Nakata, you realize that we are at a crossroads in saving our planet. You know, obviously, I'm not going to support this junk with Putin one time like this, but I never would for any reason. I mean, invading a country and shooting maternity wards, it's ridiculous. It's a terrible crime. But going out and killing Ma because you want to call attention to the fact that we're not at the jump and holler about Africans from the Ukraine being turned away at the Polish and Italian borders or slowed down. That's all very nice. But what did Ma have to do with it? You know, I mean, so what I'm getting at is that they're making bad calls. They're playing Twisted Louis. And Joe Biden's Iron Curtain is a major factor in this not being addressed at all because he favors Twisted Louis. Twisted Louis is his kind of guy. Sorry, that's how it goes. Jane Fonda. My father was a naval veteran. I don't understand where you could possibly get off